OK, Paul, what about this from The Telegraph? What's going on?
Yeah, Telegraph here, Andrew. Tories plan to wrongfoot Starmer by exposing Labour debt risks. So this is the Conservatives are planning to use the budget to wrongfoot Sir Keir Starmer on borrowing in an attempt to show that, under Labour, Britain would go further into debt.
OK, what do you make of it?
Well, obviously it's the last budget before there's going to be a general election, so there's going to be lots of giveaways.
Yes.
So that's going to put Labour under pressure anyway, because there's going to be all sorts of goodies, and they might have to retract some of those. They'll certainly have to have a close look at them. What they plan to do in some way is look at reducing the debt, because that's essentially what they've been trying to do for a long time. It's called austerity and cost of living. So they know that Labour are going to have to come in and borrow to achieve a lot of the things that they want to achieve. And, of course, that never looks great, because we've always, to quote Brown, boom and bust. So the danger is here that he does wrong foot, but I don't think it matters. I don't think what he does with his feet, I think it's all over for the Tories.
I think it probably is all over, but this idea of... he's promising tax cuts. He reiterated that in his Christmas message. I mean, Cressida... is Paul right that actually, at this point, Rishi Sunak, wouldn't it be refreshing if in his Christmas message he just said, "We've lost, guys, so we're just gonna hand the baton over."
I don't know. I mean, Keir is already doing some of this, isn't he? So in a sense, it's working. Because what's the thing recently? 28 billion they were going to spend on green stuff, and they're now saying, "Oh, well, we didn't mean it. We're not going to spend that much." So that tells me that what Rishi's trying to do is kind of already working.
Yeah.
Although I agree, I don't think it's going to make any difference.
I agree. There is a lot of things that have been going on that's already working, but it's just not going to be enough, I think, and I'm not quite sure what the Conservatives can do. One thing I would say, which kind of counters what I said, is there needs to be a huge swing. There still needs to be a huge swing in order to get Labour a decent majority.
Yeah.
So I said quite seriously a couple of months ago there still could be a hung Parliament and the Lib Dems will play a big part. I still believe it.
OK, well, here's my prediction. For what it's worth, I think there's going to be a Labour victory, but not sufficient to win it alone. They'll go into coalition with the Lib Dems, and then as part of a deal, they will agree to proportional representation. That will be granted, and then the next time round we'll have a much more interesting political landscape. Do you think that's right, Lewis?
No.
Well, I've said it here. It's on record.
Yeah, I think.
And we'll see if I'm right.
Well, I respect that you're willing to go out on a limb. The fact is that people hate the Tories. Half the Tories hate the Tories.
Yeah, that's true.
They hate them, not just because they're Tories, but because they lied to their own people.
Well, and because they're not Tories.
It's because they're not sufficiently conservative.
And they're not Tories. My prediction is it's going to be a landslide.
For who?
For Labour.
A landslide, OK?
No, I think it's going to be a kind of dribble just over the line.
The thing is, you see those Christmas messages, and I'm sorry, and I'm sure he's a lovely human being, but Keir Starmer, it was so boring.
Dull.
It was so dull. It was like
got no riz.
He's got no riz.
Oh, lovely.
You see, that's how you slip in the word of the year into conversation.
There you go.
Got no riz. It's just that kind of sense of just like you're talking to someone who isn't. He's just like a robot, you know. I feel bad saying that because I'm sure as soon as you take the news cameras away, he's probably actually quite normal and nice. And
the same can be said for Rishi. I don't think you can just look at Rishi and see any of the riz either.
Is it to do with being in such a role as the leader of the opposition?
We've had the opposite in Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
Do you remember him? And people don't like it. I guess because he managed to combine a good character, some would say,
yes,
with sort of being very
well, he was a
deceitful.
performer. I think this is the point. Like, we've had this very sort of presidential style of politics, I think, ever since Margaret Thatcher. Tony Blair certainly went down that route. And I think what's happened is we're used now to charismatic prime ministers. And then when you suddenly start getting people like Theresa May, again, Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak, and next Keir Starmer, we've really bucked that trend now, haven't we? And again, all of those people, I think, are probably really fun, bubbly people, but they're just not performers. You know what I mean? In fact, you noticed as soon as Theresa May was no longer Prime Minister, she loosened up. Yeah. And she was much more interesting.
We saw the cornfield, Theresa May, didn't we?
We did. Didn't she run through a field of wheat?
She did, which was very naughty of her, Andrew, and I'd like to have met her during that time. And we got to see a little bit of what that might have been like.
Well, actually, running through a cornfield is vandalism, and it can mess up a harvest, it can mess up a crop, it can ruin a farmer's livelihood. And we don't know what happened to that farmer. He maybe went into depression, spiralled into anxiety, and eventually suicide.
Andrew.
Yeah.
Andrew. No, that's true. But I think all that Labour can do is mess it up.
Yeah, well, maybe.
And I've spoken to many, many, many Labour supporters.
Yes.
Or at least one. At least one.
Yeah, Josh Harry.
And they love Keir Starmer.
Do they?
I think he is a real person who believes what he believes, and he's a proper Labour. This is what I've heard.
Did you speak to Keir Starmer?
I spoke to one person.
I hear he's a lot more left-wing than he lets on.
Yes,
of course he is.
That's kind of very interesting.
We saw that. Oh, sorry to talk over everybody. I'm just not used to having so many people around me. We saw that. We saw that when he was under Corbyn. I mean, he fully supported Corbyn. He'd have had Corbyn as Prime Minister.
Yes.
And we'd have all been sat here now wearing the same uniform if he had.
Yes, but
on,
we're all
on meal
about
vouchers.
letting people change their views and come to different ideas years later, aren't we? You know, we can't dig something up from the past and say, you always thought this. You may have moved on.
Paul, I'm sorry, I can't take you seriously talking about politics in this earnest way with glitter around your eyes.
How dare you?
I think you're going to have to get used to it, Andrew.
I've got plenty left, Andrew.
Oh, well, maybe I'll have some of that later on. Who knows?